Copy of the news tomorrow, Thursday, November 10th, 2022. So in the news today, last couple of days, there's a number of articles about 5G towers sparking outrage across New York City. Well, they have every reason to be concerned about these towers across New York City. I've got an article that just bring up the tiny URL here, tinyurl.com. What are those towers? Now going to the article itself, a closer look at the article. Okay, what are those mysterious new towers looming over New York sidewalks? Well, if you look at the picture here, the article says they're 32 feet high, which looks about right. The antenna is 10 feet or 3 meters, and notice how close it is to what would be normal living places for in somebody's residences in New York City. Now this is very serious. We're normally quite concerned about all the radiation that people are being exposed to, and there's good reason for that. But there's a whole area that these towers are bringing up that, well, people just aren't aware of, aren't thinking about, and it's very serious that in particular that, well, some of the effects I'm talking about could be stopped by the brick walls. If you open the window, you're fully exposed to coming from that tower. And this is I first ran across the issue about near-field radiation. I first ran across the issue about near-field radiation when I realized that my exposure to radiation was in the what they call the near-field reaction zone, and Holocaust range zone. So did a lot of research in that, and when I found out about it, I contacted what at that time was Industry Canada, now Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. They were quite helpful. They sent me this technical note 261. I have actually the earlier version, but it says the same thing in this case. Now, in this technical note, and just take a look here, but the conclusions are particularly interesting. They are pointing out that this note is all for a single antenna site, and if there's multiple antennas, there's a whole new, more complex discussions that need to go on. Now, I should point out the one thing that is new with 5G, whether it's the millimeter band waves or less, is that they are all broadcasting on multiple frequencies, which makes a single 5G antenna, even if it doesn't have millimeter waves, a complex environment, and there's a whole different protocol. They should be doing measurements in the field to determine what is safe. Now, as I say, I'm referring to Industry Canada or Innovation, Science, Economic Development, but I understand that the FCC in the state has virtually identical writing letters, so probably can't copy the FCC in the state. The general public is in what they would refer to as the non-exempt zones. They refer to two different categories, and this relates to calculations when you get going on electrically small and electrically large antennas. Now, in this case, I'll be talking about it will be exclusively with electrically large antennas, electrically small. The same issues apply, just different formulas to determine where the end of the near field zone is. Now, they particularly recommended that I look at the Annex 8, or Annex 8, where it discusses the near field. In this case, they're calling it the transition, well, it's also the intermediate zone. It's not till you get out into this far field zone here that we experience the inverse square law, where radiation starts dropping off the quarter every time you double the distance. Before that, you were dealing with spectacular spikes and especially more so when you start throwing in different antennas broadcasting your data, you get all sorts of interference, and who knows what the real spikes are. But I don't think they really studied that properly from what I've been able to tell. They define the fields here, what they're talking about, what to be concerned. Now, I should point out that they're talking about very much some millimeter wave frequencies, and it seems that things are considerably different once you get up into, not too much, well, considerably worse once you get up into the higher frequency. Now, you can go through the formulas, but I confess I cheat, and I use an online calculator. In this case, to reflect the what we saw in the photograph there, a 3 meter or 10-foot high antenna, so we have that interfere frequency. We'll use the minimum millimeter wave frequency of 30 gigahertz. We come down here, we do a calculation. Well, 0.00999 is pretty close to 1 millimeter. Now, the extremely dangerous zone to be in is this reactive near field zone. It's what I was in, and you get spectacular, wildly spectacular spikes of radiation. And well, that's what got me and caused brain tumor, unfortunately. WorkSafe BC is not confident in understanding that. But at 32 meters would be well within inside, especially going in an open window to anyone well in the building. On the other side of the building would still be within the 32 meters in most cases. Now we get down here to the 1800 meters is where the far field starts. Well, 1800 meters is over 1 mile. So these spectacular spikes of radiation can occur in the large areas and throw in. I think New York is looking at putting 2,000 of these antennas in. There will be a considerable amount of interference and spikes multiplying with each other, causing who knows what ultimate radiation. The only way to tell is to be there in the field and measure. Now, just to explain these a little more, the bigger the antenna, the further it is to the far field, and the higher the frequency, the further it is to the far field. We can say 30 gigahertz is basically 1 millimeter. Well, we'll take this up to approximately half a millimeter, which is one of the frequencies that they're talking about using for 5G. They've taken up to 60 gigahertz. Now, note how the number changes. Well, there we are, just under half a millimeter. But the reactive zone has gone to over 45 meters. In the far field, well, we're looking at over 2 miles. So, and no one should be in the reactive or intermediate field zone. So basically, ignore this guidance to depopulate the city. Most people's, well, I know, you say probably everyone's commercial level radiation meter cannot measure a magnetic field. What it does is it calculates the magnetic field based on the electric field, assuming the meter is in the far field zone. So when you're inside the far field zone, you have to apply a multiplier depending on the situation, according to Dr. Robert Kane, up to 100 times to get the true power density. And this, most people don't realize. It's also why when you are close to a source and you move your meter around, you get wildly jumping around numbers because you're picking up the spikes, sometimes not other times, etc. Now, this is where I showed an example with the millimeter waves, but with one's laptop, cell phone, iPad, whatever, the distance to the far field is considerably less, but it's still a significant distance. Around the laptop, it's approximately 6 feet, which sort of makes it rather difficult to use a laptop on the lap unless you've got very unusually long arms. Around the cell phone, well, once again, I'm not sure what the antenna is, and there's a multiple number of frequencies it may be on. The 3/4 of a centimeter is nowhere near far enough away from the body to feel comfortable. Now, because it's difficult to understand and calculate the numbers with absolute assurance, and you can't run around testing everything all the time, I personally recommend taking their numbers and doubling the distance to err on the side of caution. And before they close, I remind everyone, take a look at Innovation Science Economic Development Canada's technical note 261, read that and understand what they were getting at there in particular.